Hello, my friends. This is Dr. Ginny Barrow. I want to bring you a topic that I think is going to get you interested and at the same time may make you question, how can I do this for myself? And the topic is living with joy as a default. So many of us are always looking for joy, myself included, meaning I want my life to be peaceful, joyful, and as enjoyable as it possibly can be while I take care of business and run my business and care for my clients and care for my son and my family and my friends and people in my circle of influence. And when we look at how we typically react, how we carry ourselves through work and in our personal lives, notice how most of the focus is usually on the problems, what's not working right, who said what upset you, what triggered you, etc. Our brains, unfortunately, were designed to keep us safe. And as such, it's always looking for problems, things that aren't working. The good news is that we are no longer bound by our subconscious brain to walk through the earth mindless, not paying attention to what is happening. With so much around us talking about mindfulness, self-awareness, which is one of the components of emotional intelligence, it's impossible for us to listen to a podcast or read something and then pretend like we didn't read it or listen to it. And so with this additional level of information that's accessible and available to us, we get to choose on many levels what we pay attention to and what we prioritize. So how can we live in a state of joy by default? How can we override the programming that we were born with to look for problems and focus on those problems instead of looking at the possibilities and how to move forward constructively? My first recommendation to you is to practice as much as possible mindfulness. And that basically means watching your thoughts, watching where you focus most of your energy. Are you typically focused on the what if scenarios? What's going to go wrong? And sometimes we're so attached to those that we take a lot of pride in being the type of person who's always looking for the problem. And when we do that, not only do we project that anxiety or the unknown or the fear of the future onto the people around us, but that prevents us from enjoying the current moment where nothing is wrong, nothing is broken, and where you may be starting to look for solutions for whatever problem that you foresee. That is the first piece of the puzzle, to become very watchful of your thoughts and where you're focusing them. And then to choose a different track. I think you've heard perhaps people say, just switch the track, pick another song, tell yourself another story. We're constantly telling ourselves stories in our head. And when we do that, if the stories happen to be disempowering, we tend to feel the emotions that are related to those stories. And the flip side of that is true too. When we change the record, when we switch tracks, and we change the story to be more empowering and to focus on, this is the problem now, what can I do to address the problem? I'm not going to project that problem years and years into the future to bring me down emotionally. When we are able to do that, prevent us from doing that, then we can switch the track. We can play a different story in our heads, tell ourselves a different narrative. So that's the first piece of the puzzle, mindfulness. The second piece is commitment. We all have the same 24 hours a day, and our commitment to our peace, to our joy, to whatever emotional state we want to sustain means that we will do whatever it takes to sustain that while being kind and compassionate with ourselves and others around us. For example, commitment to my joy means that when I face a problem or when I encounter a situation that potentially can take me down a rabbit hole, that I'm going to be mindful and notice it. And in that beat, I'm going to make a choice. How do I want to move forward from here? For example, the other day, it was the morning. I woke up my son around 6 a.m. to get ready for high school, and he was giving me a really hard time. He didn't want to get out of bed. And a part of me wanted to go into this mode of demanding and commanding. If you don't get out of bed, then the bus is going to leave you and I'm not driving you to school. That was one thought that I was having. On the other side of that, I switched to compassion and I said, wow, he must be tired because he had a really long day yesterday at school. And then he went to practice and then he went to watch his friend wrestle in the wrestling team. So he didn't get home until 8 p.m. plus. Then he had to get home, do homework, take a shower, and go to bed. So in that moment where I noticed that, wow, perhaps I'm going to go into this mode of demanding and commanding, I chose to pick compassion instead. And as a result, I was able to be kinder to him, let him know that I know he must be tired. What can I do to help? And it was a whole different morning than what it could have turned into. And that's an example of the mindfulness piece and your commitment to having that peace. What you will notice in your life and in your career is that you will see very different results than you have been seeing up to now. Before, perhaps when you reacted to something that was happening, you probably created more drama, chaos. You injured a relationship between you and the person or the people that you were interacting with, instead of building a safe environment where you could express what you were going through and the other person could respond to you. What happens when we are mindful and committed to our state of joy is that we then decide to make those choices that will make the results that we're looking for closer and more aligned to how we want to be and how we want to live. This level of intentionality in our lives makes a world of difference. And all it takes is the commitment to living by default in joy and being mindful about where your thoughts are going and mindful and self-aware of your actions. And then choosing those actions that will give you the results that align with living in joy. And that's my Start a Day with Ginny for today. I hope you enjoy this. If you did, leave me a comment. I know we're speaking about topics that we typically don't talk about in the corporate world. And after being in that world for over 25 years, and now as a leadership coach and career strategist for the last 5, I am so grateful to share my journey with you to more joy and more peace in my life. And even as I run my own business, which is probably the hardest I've ever worked in my life, how do I live with more joy in my heart and bring it to the people that I love and the people who I share my life with? That's what happens when you put in the work and the commitment. And it's not easy. So if you need support in doing this, in getting to a level of mindfulness and self-awareness where you get to choose how you react to the stimuli that you're receiving from the world and commit to living in whatever state and emotion that you choose to, you can always connect with me at callwithginny.com. Live with purpose, live with joy.